What is going on YouTube? Gabmus here and welcome to the 11th episode of the Tech Pills weekly live stream. Hope everyone's doing alright. So let's jump on to the first news of today. Metro Exodus is coming to Linux, quote unquote, soon. So Metro Exodus is the last chapter in the Metro video game series. If you've been a Linux gamer for a while, you're probably familiar with it. The Metro games are first-person shooters, based on the homonymous Metro book series, and they're post-apocalyptic first-person shooters with a heavy stealth element, and I've been really enjoying. I've really enjoyed playing like the first two chapters, Metro 2033 and Metro Last Light, as they were among the first games ever to actually support Linux natively. So that's before even the Proton days. So there was a bit of a controversy around Metro Exodus since it was released exclusively on the Epic Game Store upon launch, and of course, as it goes with these deals, with these Epic exclusivity deals, at some point they're just bound to end. And actually, the exclusivity deal for Metro Exodus just ended recently, and the game is now on Steam. And well, it's already playable on Linux through Proton with a gold rating, which is pretty impressive by itself. But according to an announcement made by the developers, Metro Exodus is planned for Linux already. So apparently, as soon as the development of the new DLC is done, so should be the porting to Linux, hopefully. And to be honest, that's great news. I've been a really big fan of the game series, and I think it's one of the best games in recent years, period. Let alone the fact that it's one of the best native games, game series on Linux. I think this is a great opportunity for the Metro developers to show their love and continued support for Linux, even though the publisher made the deal with the Epic Games. I know that many people, including myself, actually don't like Epic Games and don't like their stance towards Linux in the open source world, and the fact that they just don't like the Linux platform, even though they actually donated some money to Lutris for to be able to port, well, more than porting, to be able to make the Epic Game Launcher or Epic Game Store run on Linux through Lutris. Their stance is still pretty negative and aggressive towards Linux, so I don't like them. Many people don't like them, and with many of these exclusivity deals, people have been pushed away from these companies, mostly because, well, Steam is the de facto standard gaming store out there, and it's one of the first big companies, particularly in gaming, to give a real chance to the Linux platform. So seeing Metro Exodus probably soon coming to Linux is great news. I really hope to be able to play this game as soon as possible, and I'm sure I'll have a great time. It will also be interesting to see how it performs, considering that since the last Metro game, there's been quite some change in the Linux gaming ecosystem, considering that most of the effort is now focused on Vulkan, and for good reason. I mean, Vulkan is just a superior backend onto which to build a game engine, particularly when compared to OpenGL. So my best bet is that their port will use Vulkan, and that will be interesting, mostly to compare the performance to other native Vulkan titles, namely Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which by the way performs great on Linux, or other Vulkan solutions like DXVK. So let's move on to the next news. Collabora Office brings LibreOffice to Android and iOS. So, if you don't know, Collabora is a software consulting company that has been very much involved in the open source world, and particularly in the development of LibreOffice and related technologies, including an instance of LibreOffice Online called Collabora Online or Collabora Office Online. I can't remember that off the top of my head. But anyway, apparently they've been working on a port of LibreOffice for the mobile platforms, and this comes as quite unexpected to me personally, as I didn't think that there was enough interest in building something like this, in building LibreOffice for the mobile platform. But apparently there is, and I'm grateful to see that the results are quite awesome. Let me actually show you the Play Store screenshots. So this is what the new Collabora Office for Android looks like. And as you see, the interface is not very much reminiscent of LibreOffice itself. But once you start playing with it, you realize that the backend is very much familiar. The way you manipulate text and tables, insert images and other content, it's pretty obvious that's LibreOffice. Where it's less obvious is in how responsive the app actually is. I've actually downloaded it and tried it for myself, and I can tell you that I'm not deleting that, and I'll be using this in my day-to-day life. Well, of course, I won't be writing essays on my phone anytime soon, particularly using LibreOffice. If you were if you were telling me something like VM and Markdown, I'll probably do that on my phone even. But anyway, that's beyond my point. This new app here has been very well built, particularly considering the performance that LibreOffice has on the desktop, which is not like that great, particularly when compared to other similar products. So the experience is really smooth, and even if the UI is still a little bit clunky, I mean, this is a new app, so they're probably going to improve on it and build on top of it to make it better over time. That's kind of expected. But the main point here is that you can just interact with the document without much effort, which is the most important thing here, in my opinion, because it often happens to all of us. We just are on the go. We receive an email with a doc file or an Excel file. We need to quickly take a look at that, or even just make some small edits because we need to send it back or something like that. That's a very common scenario, particularly in my life. And not having like a dedicated app on our phones. If I don't really like using my phone to do any actual work, but from time to time it actually comes in handy. And also being an Android user that doesn't use Google Apps, yeah, you heard it right, I use Android without Google Apps, and that includes the Play Store, so I don't even use Play Store to begin with. I cannot use, or even if I could, I wouldn't want to use stuff like Google Documents, or even less likely than that, Microsoft Office or anything like that. Most of the Office solutions, particularly for Android, are closed source and proprietary, and I don't really want to go that way for myself. So having this tool to be able to actually control, manipulate the documents as well as read them on the go is well, it's invaluable to me. It's one thing that I haven't had on my phone for a really long time, and I'm happy to see an fully open source solution coming to Android and iOS as well, in the form of Collabora Office. Among the most noteworthy features, there's PDF export, which I've tried and works pretty well. And most importantly, it supports printing right from the app, which doesn't sound too new or innovative, but if you've used Android with Google Apps, at some point you've come to realize that there are not many apps, not many built-in apps, or even F-Droid apps support network printing. So having that option is really something that I will make a big use of. So moving on to the next news of today, Ubuntu is reworking their drivers app to make it easier. And I want to add on that and say that, well, it's not enough. So let me actually show you a picture of the current mockup for the new and redesigned software and updates app for Ubuntu. So it looks pretty much the same as what it looked at like what it looks like right now. The only big differences are that apparently there will be less information on the actual toggles, on the actual buttons that you have to press. The main problem being that the driver installer, the additional drivers app for Ubuntu, is particularly confusing, especially for new users, because it shows information like I don't know, meta package or XOR, or stuff that normal users don't really know what it means. So indeed, this is a simplification over their old design, but I still think that they could use some more work. For starters, it's basically the same. It's weird for new users to understand that they have to choose between an open source and a proprietary driver. In the case of NVIDIA in particular, I think that there's no option but using the proprietary driver, because if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, you are either gaming or using CUDA, and in both of those cases you need the closed source driver. Even if you have like an older card that Nouveau supports better, that's still not enough for normal user. I wouldn't suggest anyone to use the Nouveau driver. And considering that Ubuntu is aimed at new users, having the open source option doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because people are probably gonna try to use the Nouveau driver if they don't know any better, and they're gonna find out that their games, if they even launch, they just stutter and don't work, or in the case of CUDA, they just cannot use it, which is dumb, of course. And this is not really a fault with Ubuntu itself, but a fault with NVIDIA using a proprietary model for their driver. But we've gone through that already many times in the community, so I won't add much more than that to the conversation because it's really redundant. But in my opinion, they should just have one option to either install or not install the proprietary driver and make it more simple, because you're giving like 4 choices to a user that doesn't even understand why they need to download the driver in the first place. Because you have to remember that people expect their computer to just work. So even something as trivial as installing a driver is seen by an inexperienced user as an unnecessary step. Anyway, again, I think they could work on it. I think that they should remove these options. And at the end of the day, if a user wants to use the open source option because of moral reasons, or because they just don't want to use closed source or proprietary software, they can just go ahead and enable like the Nouveau driver from the command line or from somewhere else. This isn't really a solution, in my opinion. Again, an improvement, the effort is appreciated, but they need to do more than that. So let's move on to the next news, and we're talking about Arch Linux. Arch Linux is under new leadership. So it's weird to hear something like that, but yeah, the old Arch Linux leader Aaron Griffin, that's been leading the project for about 13 years at this point, which is just crazy if you ask me, has decided to step down. He says that his involvement in the project has laid down over time, which is understandable for most open source projects. That's what happens, and it's not expected of anyone to be able to keep up with all of the projects that they lead, that they maintain for forever. I mean, it's natural that at some point a project gets new leadership, particularly a big project as Arch Linux is, particularly in these latest years. Quoting directly from Aaron's post, Arch Linux needs involved leadership to make hard decisions and direct the project where it needs to go. Well, I couldn't be more. I completely agree with what Aaron has to say here, and I'm sure that no one here has any hard feelings towards him. And particularly for something like, well, a distribution is a pretty big project, and considering that Arch is one of the like base distributions, it's not based on anything, they have lots of decisions to make, particularly with some decisions that could lead to controversy, like it was for systemd back in the day, or at some point possibly we'll see the necessity to make the same decision for something like, I don't know, systemd homed. So of course something like a distribution, particularly Arch, needs a strong leader to make strong and hard decisions. So from now on, the leadership of Arch Linux will be determined by an election, which is it's the most logical way of sorting these kind of things out, if you ask me. And with 58 votes, the new elected leader of Arch Linux will be Levente Poliak. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Also known as Anthrax with a double final X. Apparently, Anthrax has been an active member of the Arch Linux project for a long time, particularly regarding the security side of the distribution. So I'm sure they will do a great job leading Arch Linux to its future. But to be honest, at this point, I don't really know how much this will change the nature of Arch itself, because as we all know, with these open source projects, and particularly with Arch, it's very much a community effort more than anything. From package maintainers to AUR contributors to the Arch Wiki contributors to people asking and replying to questions in forums and IRC. I think that this is what Arch is really all about and what it represents. It's differently from something like Debian, which has a very structured it has a very structured leadership and very structured roles inside of the community, and maybe that's one of the reasons why it's so slow moving. Arch is very dynamic, and users themselves have lots of freedom regarding how they want their system to behave. Starting from the very installation, this is one of the staples of Arch at the end of the day. Users can decide how they want their desktop, how they want their computer to work, what packages, what different solutions they want in their system. And even if they want something that's not currently supported in Arch Linux, making an AUR package, which is at the end of the day just a normal Arch package, is very easy to the point of being trivial to anyone that can write a bash script. So this is the kind of freedom that Arch is all about. And having a new leader, while I think that's very important, I don't think that it will change the direction that Arch is going. I think that the only thing that can happen is that the distribution will just keep moving forward at maybe a faster pace. And that's really what I hope here. If you don't know, I'm a very avid Arch Linux user myself. I really like the distro. I really like the philosophy behind it. And I feel in a way that it's my distribution, like as compared to something like Ubuntu or Debian, where I don't really, or Fedora even, where I don't really feel the ownership of the distribution. With Arch, I do feel this ownership. I feel that I built my system myself, like from scratch. It's not really from scratch, of course, but the amount of freedom that I had as a user have, and anyone using Arch as a user has, makes it like more of a community effort. It's a personal thing. My Arch setup is probably 90% different from anyone else's Arch setup, which is in my opinion a great thing and a staple to what the wider Linux and open source community should represent. But anyway, good luck to Levente, Polyak, Anthrax for this new leadership role, and let's move forward together. So let's move on to next news for today. We're switching gears back to Ubuntu again, well, kind of, and we're talking about the Unity 8 desktop. And if you don't know, back in the 1604 days, Ubuntu used the now deprecated Unity 7 desktop environment, which is based around GTK and Compiz, and which has at this point been mostly abandoned. I still think it is in maintenance mode for like extended support, but that's beyond the point. Since Ubuntu started working on their Ubuntu Touch project, they've been developing a new UI shell for both phones and desktops, and that's Unity 8. It's of course a logical continuation of the project, since it has the same style, has the same objective, the same ideas behind it. So it made sense to call it Unity 8, even if the project itself was very different from the very beginning. You see, Unity 8 is based on GTK and Compiz, as I said. Unity 8 instead is based on Qt and QML. I don't really have much to say about this change. I have my opinions, which are not universal, and just my opinions, so I just don't feel like sharing them. But the Unity 8 desktop, of course, died off, at least in Canonical's book, once they abandoned the Ubuntu Touch project and decided to switch to GNOME as their default desktop environment. So what happened, of course, is that the community picked up the work, and as we all know, UbiPorts is now the main developer of both the Ubuntu Touch project as well as the Unity 8 desktop. And they decided to, they recently decided to rename the desktop environment from Unity 8 to Lomiri, or Lomiri. And yeah, so get used to this. The new name for Unity 8 is Lomiri, Lomiri. Weird name, I don't know what that means. But anyway, the main reasons behind this name change are that, first of all, Unity is more often than not associated with either the old Unity 7 we talked about, or the Unity game engine, which of course doesn't have anything to do with Unity 8. Moreover, apparently the use of the word Ubuntu in some of the dependencies is apparently a problem for those packages to be included in the repos of Debian and Fedora. So, considering all of these problems, and also considering that UbiPorts DE doesn't have much to do with Ubuntu anymore. I mean, they're developing it, they're moving it forward, and it's their project now. It makes sense to dissociate from the Ubuntu and Unity branding towards a newer, unique and own branding. And that's where the name and the brand Lomiri step in. I mean, this is just another move to observe the direction that the UbiPorts guys are taking. Lomiri and UbiPorts are shaping up to be more and more their own thing, which is great in my opinion. And at some point, probably at this point we'll see an Ubuntu Lumira edition for the desktop, and I think that'd be quite funny. Anyway, I'm still waiting to see this, well, now renamed Lumira desktop environment ported to Arch in the AUR, so that I can try it out and see how it works. Anyway, let's move on to the next news. Genome Clocks. The Genome Clocks app gets a new design, now featuring libhandy and weirdly round buttons. So, since the Librem 5 project has started, and since the Purism decided that they want to base their phone UI around GTK, Gnome has kind of been like more and more on board with the idea of making their apps more responsive. And Genome Clocks is just the last instance of Genome core apps getting ported to, more than ported, getting adapted to run on phones using the new libhandy library. So I've actually had the chance to try the new Genome Clocks, and actually let me show you live if I can. I just have to run this. There we go. All right. So this is the new Genome Clocks app, and it's very much different from the old from the older Clocks app. I don't think I can open both at the same time. Or can I? No, I don't think so. Anyway, this is the new design, and the first thing you can see is that gone are the ugly boxes with the sky background. They're all identical, showing the time. Instead, now we have a simple indication of the city, and showing that this is the current time zone. And we have also a colored label, with a colored background, showing that currently it's we're in the afternoon and the sun is going down. So pretty nice. We have a new alarm system that's that allows for repeats as well as names, so we can set different alarms. And I don't know, there we go. We can quickly enable and disable them, edit them. All of this wasn't very intuitive with the old design. Even the stopwatch, let me actually delete this. Even the stopwatch got a quick redesign, featuring these well, actually very nice colors. I really like the color choice here, and the fact that Gnome maps are getting more colorful all around, and the fact that these I mean, the design of these new buttons is also pretty weird, but also nice to see, as it's something new. I mean, I'm pretty sure that GTK buttons, as a GTK developer, I'm pretty sure that GTK buttons don't have like this much curvature to them. But I don't know, it's a different design, and maybe it's because they want to be more central to the UI, and they decided this is a good idea. I don't think it looks bad. I think it fits with the overall design of GNOME app. The timer also got a redesign, including now quick durations for commonly used timer durations, like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 15, 30, 45, and 1 hour. And of course, you can still customize them using the spinners here, and you can just let it run, pause it, and you can even add new timers, which I don't think was previously possible before. But anyway, as you see, this isn't really too much of a change functionally. It's more, again, of a design change, but a very appreciated one, because I actually think we really needed a better Clocks app, considering that it's one of the main apps that you need to use on your phone, particularly for the alarm. Anyway, let's move on to the next news. Manjaro launches a new web software store called Discover Software. And actually I have to share the screen again here because I want to show you. So this is the new front end for Manjaro's packages, and it's called, well, Discover Software. Let me actually zoom in a little bit. It's shaped like most of your typical app stores out there, showing featured apps and these big banners. It's a bit, I mean, it lacks character at this point. I think they're still working on it. I hope they're still working on it. It doesn't look too bad, but it also doesn't look great at this point. But it's a nice idea and an interesting one. They also are including in this Discover Software webpage both snaps and Flatpak packages. As you see here, this is the snaps page and this is the Flatpaks page. And all this really does is act as an additional front end for the Snap Store and FlatHub. So this isn't much more than that. Maybe it will feature some more integration with the desktop PAMAC app. And I really think that's the direction they want to go. At this point, the Manjaro Discover website, Discover Software website, isn't too much useful, but again, it's an interesting idea, possibly, and I really hope that they're moving towards that direction. They'll be adding something like the elementary app store, where where developers can sell their apps and users can pay for them, even with a wrong screen, even with a pay what you want system. And I really think that be like a great direction to support app developers if they were able to actually set up a paid app store for Manjaro apps, if that's even a thing. But anyway, this is gonna wrap it up for today, guys. I just want to make a quick announcement. So March 1st, I'll be a guest host in the Destination Linux podcast. So I want to thank the guys over at Destination Linux and the Destination Linux Network for this opportunity. I'm really happy to be able to join the conversation with them. If you don't know them, you should really follow them. You can find them on YouTube. And also they have their own website. It's destinationlinux.network. They're great guys. They do a weekly podcast similar to what I'm doing here, but of course on a more professional level. And the fact that they are 3 to 4 people discussing their passion for Linux and open source software really makes the whole thing a lot more interesting to listen to and to watch. Anyway, guys, again, this is gonna wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you like this video, make sure to press the thumbs up button down there. Also remember to subscribe to my channel if you want more of this. So guys, thank you again for watching, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.